If the enrollment in Johnston County Public Schools is largely with the new charter schools and the homeschools, why has the funding gone up 25-30% in just 2 budget cycles to a school system with a flat or maybe 1% growth model?
That is a great question. One that took a lot of debate on, and I will say there's a lot of funding that is in place that became because of COVID that is not there anymore. And so when you kind of get something there, and I'll say it's effective or needed, it's hard to cut away from. And then and that's not counting inflation with the price of diesel fuel and the cost of buses and everything else going up. And we're trying to, I will say this, for the relationship between the public schools and the commissioners when I got on the board was probably not the best. And I will say over those 6 years, we have seen the trust between the two boards increase dramatically.
Welcome to another episode of Best of Johnston County, brought to you by Breeden Law Office. Our host, Jonathan Breeden, an experienced family lawyer with a deep connection to the community, is ready to take you on a journey through the area that he has called home for over 20 years. Whether it's a deep dive into the love locals have for the county or unraveling the complexities of family law, Best of Johnston County presents an authentic slice of this unique community.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden, and today we have with us a special guest, Butch Lawter, the chairman of the Johnston County Commissioners. This is our second episode with Butch, and if you missed the first one, please go back and listen to it, where he talked a little bit about Johnston Community College, his time on the Clayton Town Council, and some of his best accomplishments so far as a Johnston County Commissioner over the last 5.5 years. In this episode with the chairman, we're going to talk a little bit about the Johnston County Public School System, a little bit about the Sheriff's Department, a little bit about land use, zoning, and the new parks that he has been spearheading here in Johnston County, an idea that he took from building a lot of the parks in Clayton. But before we get to that, I just want to remind everybody to like, follow, or subscribe to this podcast wherever you're seeing it, whether it be Spotify, Apple iTunes, LinkedIn, TikTok, or any of the other social media pages, YouTube, that have the Best of Johnston County Podcast, so you'll be aware of future episodes of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. And if you'd be so kind to go down and leave us a 5-star review down below where you're seeing this podcast, it will help for our visibility so other citizens in the area will know about our podcast. Welcome, Butch.
Hey, good to be here.
All right, good. So we'll start with, not everybody listens to every episode, so we'll say, just tell us who you are, where you're from.
All right. Butch Lawter, born in Bat Cave, North Carolina. That is a real place. You can Google that and find out where that is. I lived next door in Chimney Rock for about 15 years, and then moved to Spartanburg for about 8 years. Lived there, went to Clemson while I was there. Got out of Clemson, came to Raleigh to go to graduate school at NC State. Got my master's in civil engineering of the geotechnical concentration, and got out of there and went to work in Raleigh for about 6 years. Was working with some people from Johnston County who kept on telling me that I needed to move to God's country, and it took me about a year to listen to them. And I wound up moving to Clayton in 1993 with my wife and 2 daughters, and been here ever since. Raised my family here. My current wife, Kim, she was born and raised here in Johnston County with her 2 sons. And between the 5 children we have and the 7 grandsons and 1 more coming, they all live in Johnston County. My mother lives in Johnston County. Kim's parents live in Johnston County, her sister. So we've got everybody here in Johnston County.
And I'm sure none of them have an opinion as to what the county commissioners should do.
Sometimes I get some helpful advice on what the county commissioners need to do. That is very true.
Well, you get some helpful advice from me too. I don't know how much you listen, but I give helpful advice.
Yes. Well, one of us thinks it's helpful. The other one may not.
Right. I know. So anyway, you're an engineer by training. I know for a period of time you worked for ST Wooten, and y'all built some roads.
We built a few roads. Matter of fact, the Clayton Bypass was one at the time that I was an estimator and helped out with the project management on that. So that was one of at the time, that was the largest project the company had ever had, about $150 million project. They've since exceeded that tremendously on a couple other projects they've got, but they worked there for 17 years, from 99 to 2016. And the last 8 years I've been at Withers Ravenel, an engineering consulting company based out of Cary.
So exactly what does an engineering consultant do?
So we do a little bit of everything. We have I'm called a senior delivery officer, which basically means I manage multiple departments. our practice areas, as we like to call them. I have the utilities group that works with me. We have stormwater group that works with me. And then we have our funding and asset management team that works with me. And when you think of your towns getting grants to do projects, that is what the funding piece of that does. And then, of course, the asset management is take a look at that, whether it's pavement, utilities. How do you plan and develop a program to spend money to maintain your infrastructure? So that's the piece I have. We've got another group that has surveying in it, full gamut of surveying. They do construction, admin, and observation work. And then we have the land development side who does subdivisions, industrial sites, commercial sites. And we're from one end of North Carolina to the other, from Asheville to Wilmington.
Okay, well, that's good. I know that keeps you busy. And then I think being a county commissioner could be a full-time job, or probably is a full-time job. I mean, it's a lot of work. I don't think people understand how much work it is. Y'all work all the time.
I would say I think I work about 40 hours a week in addition to the 45 or 50 or so I work. So I work a lot. If you ask my wife how much I work as a county commissioner, she would probably tell you it's more than that. But I don't want to say daylight to dark, but you've got people, calling with questions, emails, and then the general things that we're working on, trying to make sure you got a transportation plan. We're trying to get ordinances moving forward. We just dealt with the landfill. We're working at the fire service district. So there's just a lot of things that, and I say as chairman, you've got to make sure we're advancing down the field. And it seems slow, but and I've got a list on my phone of commissioner things that we want to make sure that are moving forward.
Right. Well, it's a lot. And, and you have people like me who call and ask you questions and text you and all that stuff, because we all have our own opinions, and I think that is helpful to the commissioners. I think all the commissioners like to hear from the public and consider it and is not bothered by really any of it. I mean,
I would 100% agree with that, because I'll say it's biblical that iron sharpens iron. So when you text me or call me with a tough question, a lot of times I may not know the answer, but I've got to go find out. So when you ask hard questions, that makes me go look for answers. And so I become better educated on things. So it is helpful when you get questions. And I don't know of any commissioners that are getting say, well, I don't want to hear from the constituents, because there are questions you got to answer, and that's how we got in office to get voted in.
That's true. So let's talk about the Johnston County Public Schools. It is the single largest part of the county commissioner's budget every year.
Nearly half.
It's nearly half. I think the budget this year was $270 million.
I think it was 370.
370 million. Golly, I remember when it was 100 million.
Yeah.
Seriously. I remember when it got to 100 million. That was a big deal. Now it's 370 million.
Yeah.
And so the school system is largely, the majority of the school system funding, for people that don't know, comes from state and federal, but the county does put in a pretty good chunk. And the county's part, I believe, pays for the buildings themselves, the maintenance of the buildings, the custodians, getting the grass mowed, and the buses. That's mainly, and then any additional positions like principals and stuff that are not allocated by the state based on average daily attendance. Am I right about that?
Yeah, it's very common, because really what we're obligated to do is school construction and that's it. But throughout North Carolina, it is very common. I'll say it's more rare for counties not to. I don't know of any counties that doesn't provide supplements. So so that's for all the other things that you mentioned. And we were at 104 million on that. We've gone from 70-ish million when I first got on there to now we're at 104. And the growth, and we hear about growth, but for the Johnston County Public Schools, that growth has flattened, and a lot of that is due to homeschooling, but also charter schools.
Right. And so my question, and I ask all the commissioners this, and I've asked you this before, if the enrollment in Johnston County Public Schools is largely with the new charter schools and the homeschools, why has the funding gone up 25, 30% in just 2 budget cycles to a school system with a flat or maybe 1% growth model?
So it is that is a great question. One that took a lot of debate on, and I will say there's a lot of funding that is in place that became because of COVID that is not there anymore. And so when you kind of get something there, I'll say it's effective or needed, it's hard to to cut away from. And then and that's not counting inflation with the price of diesel fuel and the cost of buses and everything else going up, 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 up. And we're trying to, I will say this, for the relationship between the public schools and the commissioners when I got on the board was probably not the best. And I will say over those 6 years, we have seen the trust between the two boards increase dramatically. A lot of conversations between the two boards, a lot of things I know that commissioners, even though it's not our job, since it's half the money we spend, is, like at the new schools. Historically, that's been a one-story school sprawled out, and now they're building multi-story school, less land, which is obviously getting more and more expensive, but less land, and doing that, and considering, I think they're going to redraw the district lines. So a lot of things that we're working together on to try to do things more efficiently. But it is one of the reasons, because they originally asked for, I think, for 111. Actually, I think they asked for more than that. And so we pared it back because we balanced the same thing as, how do you ask for an increase of 20% when enrollment increase is flat?
Right. I mean, I could be wrong, but it went from 78 or 79 million 2 years ago to 90 or 91 million last year to 104 million this year, while the enrollment didn't really change.
Yeah.
I mean, $20 million, $25 million in 24 months. It's a lot.
Yeah. And some of that is teacher supplements. Again, you hear and it's reality that we're losing teachers to Wake County or other places that are paying more. So we can't make up all that difference, but we do want to, just like we did for the county employees, and we did a pay study, we adjusted. I think the first adjustment we was like $8 million in additional funding that we needed for employees the first go round. We're doing that every year now, half the employees every year, so it's not quite as dramatic, but the school system is the same. We want to keep the good people, and to do that, you got to pay them, and that's.
So do you know what the county supplement is for the teachers now?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it's near 23. I have it in the spreadsheet somewhere
Okay.
where I looked at it, because one of the things we're trying to move towards to make it a little bit easier for both sides is some sort of formula, and this is a little bit in the weeds here, but what we try to do is look at what was the per pupil spending from the county side last year. And then we say, okay, what is the projected increase in students? What is the reasonable inflation rate? So we apply that to the average per student number, multiply it by the new number of students. Here's the budget. And so we're trying to get to that so we can, but with coming off of ESSER and losing a lot of money, so hopefully next year we can go to something that's, here's the percent inflation we're going to factor in. Here's the percent. And it does include charter students now. So even though you separate them out, the number of charter schools are public schools.
Right, they are.
A lot of people
Absolutely.
think they're not, but they are public schools. And the way a system works is the county gets the money and they pay whatever that per student number is to the charter schools. So there's like 40-something charter schools throughout North Carolina that they have to send the money to. And I think they paid out, I think it was $8 million that they paid out last year to charter schools, and that's going to go up.
Yeah, well, we have, ALA just opened here last year in Johnston County, and of course, News Charter has been there forever.
Right.
And I forget the name of the charter school behind the Walmart in Clayton, but it's still
Johnston
there.
Charter.
It's still there, and there's talk of other charter schools coming.
At least 2 more.
Right. I mean, I keep hearing about one coming to Clayton near the 70, where 70 bypass the 70 business meet. Right. That one hasn't been built yet, and I don't know who's going to do it, but I still think it might happen. So
I think there's one somewhere in the Four Oaks area as well.
Right. But one of the topics is, we're going to there's a school bond this fall.
Right.
And I don't know how much it is or what it's for. I know Cleveland High School gets a new wing out of it if it passes.
Yeah. So the Cleveland wing is separate.
Oh, separate. Okay.
That. Yeah. So that was separate from the bond, but there are, in this year's bond, there are 4 additions to elementary schools. Oh, I will say the one, and I don't want to say a good thing because we're still catching up, and people will say, what are you trying to do? Catch up? Are you catching up? And I'm like, I'm trying to get less behind. If I can get less behind first, then I can catch up. But with the student enrollment in the public school, Johnston County Public Schools flattening, we're looking at going from 187 mobile units down to losing 120 of those over the next 2 years. That's through new school construction. And then this bond, we've got 4 elementary school expansions. planned. And then there's some other catching up to do on chillers and other maintenance issues and things. So there's a lot in there, but I feel like we can almost see a flattening out where we're not 17 schools behind, that we're getting to a point that, maybe with another school in a few years, we're getting there, and some expansions and then some maintenance on the existing schools.
Well, and I mean, I know Cleveland High School is going to get a new wing. I know. I think
away with 20-something mobile units.
Right. And I know they're going to do a Swift Creek Elementary. That's going to be a 2-story elementary school on Cleveland School Road. And if you've not driven down there lately, you can start to see it coming together where they have the cinder blocks of where the elevators are going to be. So you can start to get an idea of how that's going to, and I guess they've started building Wilson's Mills High School.
Right. I think groundbreaking is in about 3 or 4 weeks out there. I think it's the 13th.
Yeah, so there's going to be a new high school in Wilson's Mills. I know that's much needed, and there's been some debate among the school board about whether it should have AstroTurf or grass football fields. I don't know ultimately what they decided there, but so I mean, do you believe the commissioners should chip in through bonds or general fund to pay for charter school construction? They are public schools. We have not done that so far, but should we?
So I don't know the answer to if I know the answer to that one yet, but I do know with the legislation as it exists today, it says that counties may do that. And so we with News Charter came to us and made an ask of us this year, and it's like mostly we don't know if we want to be the first one in, but we were working through what does it mean? Who will, if something were to happen, who would own the building if they were to sell it? And so we're working through some of that. And I don't know what the future holds, but if I were a betting man, I would probably say it's not too far down the road that there will be money spent on charter schools. And I know there's other states where lawsuits have already happened where kind of same situation. The charter schools came in, filed a lawsuit, and it became shell. So the counties provide capital cost. And it's really interesting because some of them are for profit, some
That's
are not. True. And so are you providing money for somebody to build a school and they're going to make a profit off of it? So there's a lot of things to work through. But the bottom line, they are public schools. People are choosing to go. And as you mentioned off air, we're talking about opportunity scholarships. And as that increases, I think the likelihood that there'll be more charter schools. So I think that's likely in the future.
Right.
Yeah, I say whether we want it or support it or not, I think that's probably going to be where we go.
Well, and the Johnston charter there behind Walmart in Clayton is a for-profit, as is ALA, which is on Highway 70 business across from St. Anne's Church before you get to Smithfield, is for-profit. But Noose is not.
Right.
Noose is a nonprofit started by local people. The other 2 charter schools are run by national corporations. I know
Right.
ALA is out of Arizona, I believe.
Yeah, I think
not sure where Johnston Charter is out of. Maybe Alabama, but I could be wrong. So I don't know I think that's where that company's from. But so it's a different thing, but yet they are still educating kids that need to be educated. They are receiving, $7,000, $8,000 per student that the other students are getting, so I mean, I get it's for profit, but they're still educating kids, and that's a school building that the taxpayers aren't paying for.
Right.
So there is that too.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to look into.
Yes. I'll just say there's been, and I know the Johnston County Public Schools, there are things they do, the transportation and meals that they provide. So if they get, and I'm just going to pick a number, if they get $2,500 for Johnston, not all of that goes to the charter schools, where they hold some back, but I don't know what that percentage is. But I think that's probably, again, where we're headed up. But I think this is, since it's the first time it's been on the table, there's, like I said, being the first one in, sometimes it's heroic and sometimes it's not. So we're trying to find that balance.
Have family law questions? Need guidance to navigate legal challenges? The compassionate team at Breeden Law Office is here to help. Visit us at www.breedenfirm.com for practical advice, resources, or to book a consultation. Remember, when life gets messy, you don't have to face it alone.
And another big thing that the county commissioners do is they fund the sheriff's department. Now, we have an elected sheriff, Steve Bizzle. He's been sheriff in Johnston County since 1998. I think he's one of the best sheriffs in North Carolina. But what role, other than funding, I mean, the sheriff, it's a huge part of your budget. Y'all do anything else with it, or just hand him a check?
So
you just build him a jail.
I hate to say we hand him the check, but we do have the financial checks and balances with our finance. Chad McLam, our chief financial officer and deputy manager. He handles, as you said, we have one of the best ones in the state. So that saves us, I won't say it saves us a lot of work, but we trust what he does. And we do, look through the budget, ask questions. And he's been really good about coming to us with new programs or why he needs money. So, and if you listen to our meetings, there's not a month goes by, our meeting goes by where there's typically not an adjustment to his budget for money from a different source or something like that. But we did recently fund the detention center, much needed, as you well know. There's cramped. People way too many people in the old one, so it's a great facility. We did the 911 communication center next door to it too. But I think that moved us way down the road and should last us for decades.
Yeah, did we sign an agreement with the feds this time to where we have to give the Fed inmates beds for some money or not?
No, so I think the contract, that contract is up, and we did not renew.
Well, that's good, because I would have clients in the jail and I would go and they'd be on the floor because a federal inmate showed up in transit or something, and the federal inmate was guaranteed a bed, and our citizen, while he was in jail, had to sleep on the floor. And I just didn't think that was right.
Yeah. That was in the last month or 6 weeks.
Okay.
Well,
that's great. That's great. Well, we do have a good sheriff's department. You know how much approximately sheriff's department? I mean, because you got a jail, you got all the deputies, all that. You remember approximately what it is in the budget?
No, I don't remember that one.
Okay. All right. Well, that's cool. All right. The next thing I want to talk to you about is the new land use plan. Everybody talks about the growth in Johnston County, and a lot of people have this sort of drawbridge thing where they moved here and then they want to roll up the drawbridge and don't want anybody else to come to Johnston County. Explain why that is not possible and what the county commissioners are trying to do to manage the growth that they cannot stop.
So I think that and you're right, that being able to stop it is not something that we can do. Even if we said we're shutting off water and sewer, I mean, there's still well and septic. If people want to sell their land, they can sell it. And so it's going to happen. So what we did with the land use plan was, let's look at how we can better manage that. And that's, to me, the biggest part of it is let's direct the more dense development towards the towns. That instead of having, I'm gonna pick on Cleveland and McGee's and then Flowers, instead of having it spread out in places that aren't towns, let's push it towards the town so they can grow, they can manage that. And so that was the biggest thing. But we're also, looking a lot at the farmland preservation, open space preservation, because the agricultural history in Johnston County is important. And when we did the land use plan, 75% of the people, that was their top priority, was preservation of farmland and open space. But again, if somebody wants to sell their property, there's not a whole lot the county can step in and say no to. So,
while I don't disagree with the plan of trying to push it towards the towns cannot annex without a vote. So how exactly are the towns supposed to be, you former town council member in Clayton for a long time, supposed to absorb this density that you want to be built on its borders when it can't really annex unless the people agree to it?
So that it is all voluntary annexation now. So typically the way that that's done is, if you want that density, you need water and sewer. So that is kind of the carrot, is if you want the density, you go to where you can get the water and sewer, and that will be the towns.
And so the town would annex these developments before they are built, extend the water and sewer, and then they would be town residents as the houses get built.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, and Clayton has got a new water treatment plant that is almost done. And so that's going to be nice. And the county has a new water treatment plant.
We actually, our new one has been operational for a few weeks now, not a full month, but that one has been open. So that expanded us a net of 2 million gallons, but and I think at our next meeting, we'll award a contract to build the next 4 million. So we're again, getting less behind on the sewer side. The water, that is, the Neuse River is a very limited resource. We've got a project coming up that should get started in, I think, 2026 and maybe be finished in 2020. Now, the first phase of it, but it's a $500 million project, but it should provide us water through 2050. But again, we're limited to the Neuse. One of the things we're looking at is regionalization. All the towns have come together, been meeting for over a year. looking at how we can do things better and what regionalization would look like and mean. We're looking at Harnett County and the Cape Fear as an option. We're looking at Wilson County. We talked with Goldsboro. So we're looking at ways to how we can work regionally to provide the water, which is a very limited resource. As a matter of fact, the most limiting and resource. And I think most people get tired of me saying this, but sewer is a big issue, but you got to have water to flush your toilet. So
that's true.
The water is the critical.
So where did the commissioners end up with the lot size? And because it bounced around, and I think it ended up a little bigger than the initial plan, but maybe not as big as some other people wanted.
Yeah, so I was trying to, and that's been a while since we got that. So I can't remember the numbers.
Right.
I know it was not an acre. I won't say it's 25,000, but if you're in an environmentally sensitive area, it's more. But I can't remember those numbers.
So it's got to be. I think it's got to be at least a quarter acre now.
No, I think it's more. I mean, if you have sewer. It's different. If you're in the residential, which is mainly Cleveland and McGee's, you can get the more dense quarter acre or whatever the lot is. But when you go out in the county, I think that I want to say it was 25,000 square feet, or maybe 30,000 square feet. Okay. If you're in an environmentally sensitive area, it goes to 40. I believe.
You know how many 30,000 square feet as it relates to an acre? Because I don't.
So 40. That's a 3/4. That's about
three quarters.
Yeah,
okay, I got
20,
you.
Yeah, 20. It's 40 something. So it's about that.
Right. I mean, I know if you look at a lot of those lots in Wellesley are 0.2, 0.25, like there might be some lots in Wellesley that are 0.19, particularly the ones.
But they got sewer.
Yeah, they have sewer right on Raleigh Road. So anyway,
the other thing with the land use plan too is trying to get more mixed use so that it's not all houses, that you have something so somebody could walk to a retail or a grocery store or something like that to make communities walkable. So I think you'll see that change rather than just be houses, and kind of like Cleveland, you got houses and then you got a node along 42 where everything is. That this will be kind of more sprinkled out where you've got that more mixed use development.
I got you. Well, one of the things will be the last topic we cover in this episode.
Can I add something to that right quick?
Sure, go ahead.
The next piece of we got the land use plan, which is a nice picture, but the ordinances, which we just started that contract, developing that, which will probably be a 12 to 14 month process. That's where the teeth are. So that's when you'll get into the lots, and that's kind of shifting gears on that.
Okay.
You'll get into different lot sizes and all that. So that'll be where the teeth are. And so that'll be when things kind of start solidifying and people understand what the real impact of that. Like I said, the land use is the picture, and then you're going to get into the details on the ordinance.
All right. Well, cool. Well, the last subject we'll cover in today's episode is parks. You were probably the number one cheerleader for creating a county park system, creating a county parks and rec department, the hiring of Adrian O'Neill, a former guest on the Best of Johnston County podcast, and the helping get the land. I mean, we got the land from the private citizens who bought it to preserve it out here in Cleveland for the county's first community park. Right. Tell me a little bit about why you're a believer in parks and how you think this is going to develop realistically around the county, as most of these towns have run big bonds to build these parks. How's this going to go?
Yeah, so I think that in Clayton, I did realize the quality of life, the addition to the quality of life that the parks provide for families to go to, for people my age and older to be able just to go out and walk, or do there's some a lot more active than me. So go out and participate in whatever form of recreation they want to. But I saw that the difference that made in the quality of life for the people. And so when I became on the county commissioners, that was one of the things I wanted to bring to the county, was doing that. Because what happened in the county is people would get together, they have some great ideas, they'd get a plan together, and then they would have, sorry about that, they would have, actually that was Rick Hester, the county manager, calling it. And then they would all say, oh, this is a great idea, great plan. And they would walk away and nobody was left to connect the dots. And so the thing that Adrian brought to the table was, and now Austin, in addition to him working with Adrian, is you have somebody at the table when people walk away that they continue to connect dots on the Mountain Sea Trail, East Coast Greenway, develop the plans and do all that. So that is a big, the park in Cleveland is that's now something that's somebody's job to say, what do we do with this next? Let's do a master plan and keep things moving rather than it build up and just go away. So I think that's the biggest piece, and I'll say a regret that I had when I early on in my commissioner career, we had the opportunity for the special tax district for recreation. And at the time, I thought, well, there may be a different, better way. 4 years later, look back, that probably should have been the mechanism we used to fund the park, because a bond, it's really hard to sell a countywide bond for a park in Cleveland to the folks in 4 Oaks or Princeton or Pine Level. So the other thing we got to do is look at how do we develop this park system and then make sure that it's spread around the county so everybody benefits from it. But I think the Cleveland, it'd probably be some bond. It's going to be, and I think you and I talked about this before, it's going to be in pieces. It's not going to be from nothing to, $40 million park. It's going to be in pieces.
Well, and I know you've just put out the first $3 million for bids, and Adrian Neal talked to us about that. It's going to be some of the parking lots, some of the drainage. I think there's going to be a drainage pond and maybe a basketball court in this initial thing that's going to take a couple of years to get done, and then we'll go from there. Eventually, when it's finished, which could be, 10, 15 years from now, it would take over the original GCA land behind the old school. The gym gets replaced. Those fields get redone. The Clayton Park will have multi-use fields, an amphitheater. It's going to be really nice. Yeah. I just know the price tag I saw was $50 million. Yeah. And at this point, if you don't go back to the special use district, I'm not sure how Cleveland gets $50 million.
Yeah, so I think that's the thing that we're looking at is because there are going to be people come, just like people go to Clayton now or Smithfield now from here, there are going to be people that actually come. So it's how much needs to be a local pay versus a county bond system, because the Cleveland Park is not going to be 100% used by Cleveland people. There's going to be I don't know if that's 80 or 70, but somehow we need to figure that math out and figure out, okay, it makes sense for Cleveland to pay for this percent and the rest of the county to pick up this percent, and wherever we go. And the same thing. But the other thing we need to do is, and we're still working on with the schools, is how do we take advantage of the ball fields? Do we add lighting to the ball fields so that GCA or some other organization, the Meadow Athletic Association, can use the facilities more than they're using them now? So we've got parks, and I know people talk about it all the time. So that's one of those things that people think, well, nothing's happening, but there's conversations going on how do we fund lights for existing ball fields wherever they are in the county so that organizations can make use of them.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, because most of the middle school and elementary school fields in Johnston County are not lighted.
That's right.
And the high school fields get used so much by the high schools, they're not really available for the community organizations like the Greater Cleveland Athletic Association, like McGee's Crossroads Athletic Association, like Archer's Large Parks and Rec, like the Meadow Group and South Johnston Baseball and all of that stuff. So, and I've been in the middle of this, being on the board of the Greater Cleveland Athletic Association for a long time. I just came off that board, but I do appreciate everything that you've done to try to at least get you and particularly Patrick Harris have done about to at least getting us having this discussion so that we can move forward. And for people that don't know, a special use tax district would act like a fire tax on your property tax bill. The proposal that was voted down a few years ago by the commissioners would have added 4 cents on the $100. I think our tax rate this year is, y'all cut it to 69, 70,
67, I think.
Right. Yeah. So it would be 4 cents on top of that. And then of course you have the fire tax, which is now 15 cents countywide. 14 cents countywide. So anyway, so that's what that would be, $80 on a $200,000 house. And that money would be used to fund a Cleveland Park if the commissioners decide to go back and do that. I don't know if they will, but it is definitely on the table, as the chairman just said. So I guess the last question we have for everybody on this podcast, what do you love most about Johnston County?
I'm a people person. So I moved here because of the people and the relationships, and I've developed many more. And it's one thing when you go out and you hear people talk about Johnston County and what it's meant to them, and whether they've been here forever or they just been here, and the people moving here, just an opportunity to have affordable housing and have a place to raise their family. And the thing that really has impressed me and I feel good about from Clayton is when I first got here, if you graduated from a high school in Johnston County, your next move was somewhere else. And now, like I said, all my family is here. The kids that went to school with my kids are living in Johnston County, raising their families. A lot of them are working in Johnston County. So to me, that is the success, is when your children, grandchildren, they don't have to move somewhere else to accomplish what they want to accomplish. So that is the measuring stick for me.
I would agree 100%. And like I said, we'd like to thank Butch Lawter for being our guest here on the Best of Johnston County podcast. This is the second episode that he is on. Go back 3 or 4 episodes and listen to his previous one where he answers some other questions about sort of what he did on the Clayton Town Council with some of his greatest accomplishments as a county commissioner so far, and Johnston Community College. As we mentioned earlier, if this is your first time listening, please like, subscribe, or follow this podcast wherever you're seeing it, whether it's on LinkedIn, YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, TikTok, or any of the other social media pages of the Best of Johnston County Podcast, so that you'll be aware of future episodes of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. The Best of Johnston County Podcast comes out every Monday, so be checking back. Until next time, I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden.
That's the end of today's episode of Best of Johnston County, a show brought to you by the trusted team at Breeden Law Office. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to sharing more interesting facets of this community next week. Every story, every viewpoint adds another thread to the rich tapestry of Johnston County. If the legal aspects highlighted raise some questions, help is just around the corner at www.breedenfirm.com.